Alrighty then, what's happening? Tim Warner here, and this lesson is called The Perils of Perfection. And what it deals with is what a trap perfectionism can be in your information technology job, particularly if you're in a creative aspect of IT. What I do is I design courses, instructional design it's called, and then I teach my own courses, which is especially satisfying. Now, over the last couple dozen years, I've coached a lot of prospective authors, fellow IT professionals who thought, I'm interested in teaching. I'd like to develop another income stream. This looks pretty fun. Well, at Pluralsight, we put prospective authors through not an interview process as such, an audition process, in order to determine, do they have the aptitude, the raw materials, and also what is their approach towards organization, instructional design, how reliable are they, all of those sort of things together. And you want to know what I find to be, in my experience, the biggest holdback globally? It would be the trap of perfectionism. I've seen people throughout my career, particularly with creative endeavors, as I mentioned, writing, technical writing, developing a presentation, developing a class, never get out of the starting gate because they're hung up with what I call, I didn't invent this, analysis paralysis. Oh, this has to be perfect. This has to be perfect. I don't even know how to start because my first brush stroke on the empty canvas has to be just perfect or the rest of it won't work. Of course I'm going to be paralyzed with fear if that's my attitude. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, again, this has been born out of my experience over a long time. No matter, it seems, no matter what I do or how I phrase it to help these people, they're not going to get over their perfectionism hang-up until they're ready and willing to get over their perfectionism hang-up. And I don't blame these people for that, because while perfectionism hasn't been a big of a problem in my life, there's a whole bucket of other things that have been and continue to be a problem. And you know what? I'm just as likely to listen to your wise counsel and then do my own thing anyway. I'm as human as they come. And if I'm learning one thing getting older, it's how profoundly similar we all are as humans, no matter where we grew up or what culture we come from. Fundamentally, we are exactly the same. Reminds me of that Styx song, The Grand Illusion. Deep inside, we're all the same. Boy, I'll tell you what, how true that is. So you may hear me speaking now, and you may feel some cringe, you might feel some discomfort, because maybe you've experienced this analysis paralysis, and you weren't able to start or complete a project because you were paralyzed with that notion it's got to be perfect or it's a no-go. Given that that's not a productive way to move forward, and also given your willingness to move beyond it, how specifically might you move beyond the perils of perfection and grasp a more reasonable approach, one that I've been taught as progress, not perfection? When I'm given an assignment, a course to make, or if I pitch an idea myself, doesn't really matter, I give that endeavor my very best effort. Now, honestly, if it's a subject matter I'm already deeply familiar with, like Microsoft Azure, or more recently, the OpenAI models, artificial intelligence, I'm pretty well ramped up on that by now, then I normally can just take off at a fast run and run across the finish line and be happy. It's more difficult when I'm faced with a technology or subject that's unfamiliar or just dead new to me, because I have to first attain my learning curve. I have to have a baseline level of competency before I could ever feel qualified to turn around and teach back that same material. So my approach in that situation is to be gentle with myself and to understand I'm on the front end of a learning curve and it's going to take a little while. Is it going to take years? No. I want to keep in mind, constant, eternal movement forward. Even if it's not running, if it's just almost crawling sometimes, I'm still going to go at least a few steps forward no matter what. That, I think, is the kernel of my message regarding how to address analysis paralysis and the trap of perfectionism, is to continue moving forward. Wise mentors in my life have given me the understanding of courage is not action without fear, but action in spite of fear. In other words, fully accepting the fear, acknowledging it, not denying it, not pushing it away, but continuing to move forward despite the fear. That is the antidote for me to analysis paralysis, continued movement forward. Now, have there been cases where I've moved forward and then realized it still wasn't working? Yes, I mean, that's life. I can think of a project that I got into and realized that it wasn't a good fit for me. And there, I think it turns into a question of self-honesty and integrity, because I have to understand if I'm doing a project for somebody, be they my employer or a consulting client, I owe honesty to them, and I don't want to keep them hanging. I need to be honest with myself. If I realize I'm in over my head, or if I'm not yet there to competently do this work, then I have a frank conversation with the powers that be, whoever they might be, and renegotiate the agreement. It's as simple as that. It's life. I think another theme that comes through as I'm talking here is that if I'm in the trap of perfectionism, I'm thinking more in terms of binary on-off, 0-1, black-white extremes, as opposed to what real life is, which is what do you call a dial? Where instead of just discrete states, it's an analog dial. It's totally blanking out of my mind, but that is how I envision life, with all sorts of shades of gray in between the two poles. And I'm talking like I'm some kind of expert here. I'm not. I practice it fumblingly along with the rest of the world. But that's something else that can, practically speaking, counteract the trap of perfectionism, recognizing that I'm suffering from some dipolar thinking. And let's get into the gray here and understand that there's lots of variation in between those two poles, and it's totally okay. All right, well, I think I've covered the subject pretty thoroughly. Let's see, anything in closing about getting beyond the analysis paralysis? Well, another thing that I'll practice is just stepping away. It's important for me to step away from my desk several times each workday and just get some fresh air and perspective. Even better if a friend calls me or if I call a friend, get out of my head for a little while and then come back to the situation renewed and refreshed. I may look at the project in a different way. I may be willing, in my case, to hit the old record button. I mean, I've been there. If you're a fellow technical trainer, you know what it's like, where the screen recorder is all queued up and ready, and all you have to do is click the go button, but it just feels like there's a 1,000-pound weight on my arm that's preventing me from hitting that button. That just happens sometimes, and in an extreme case, I might just classify that day a wash. So I think you can see a theme here, and it's all stuff I've been taught. None of this is anything that I've come close to inventing. I've been in therapy since I was a teenager, for heaven's sake. But that notion of being gentle with myself, rather than being really self-critical, judgy, shamey, that stuff has never paid me any dividends at all. But being kind to myself has. And it's a certain kind of kindness, because it's not a kindness that says, oh, we'll just take the day off, make it a wash, and forget the world. It's, no, today's a wash. I'm going to tell my colleagues, look, I'm just having that kind of a day. I'm going to take a break. In other words, being responsible with that self-care instead of just using an excuse to avoid responsibility. Well, I guess this has gotten heavier than I really intended it to be. At base, I want this to be an inspirational message, and hopefully providing some courage and inspiration if you're experiencing this analysis paralysis, perils of perfection that certainly crops up in any career, but particularly I found in the creative arts, which I'm in IT. So with that, I will thank you as always, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye.